It's time to stop just talking about education reform and start actually doing it. It's time to make education America's national mission. Put our resources behind the kinds of reforms that are going to make a difference. In the coming weeks, states will be able to compete for what we're calling a race to the top award. For $4 billion on the table. But we're not just handing it out to states because they want it. We're not just handing it out based on population. It's not just going through the usual political formulas. We're challenging states to compete for it. And I have to tell you, this was not an easy thing to get through. You are committed to real change in the way you educate your children. If you're willing to hold yourselves more accountable, and if you develop a strong plan to improve the quality of education in your state, then we'll offer you a big grant to help you make that plan a reality. Now, before a state is even eligible to compete, they'll have to take an important first step. And this caused some controversy in some places, but it shouldn't be controversial. Any state that has a so-called firewall law will have to remove them. Now, here's what a firewall law is. It basically says that you can't factor in the performance of students when you're evaluating teachers. That is not a good message to states to take a better approach when it comes to charter schools and other innovative public schools. When these schools are performing poorly, they'll be shut down. But when innovative public schools are succeeding, they shouldn't be stifled. They should be. Already, a number of states have taken us up on this challenge. Across the country, different groups are coming together to bring about change in our schools. Teachers' unions and parent groups, businesses and community organizations. In places like New Haven, educators and city leaders have come together to find a smarter way to evaluate teachers and turn around low-performing schools. In states like California and Indiana and Wisconsin, you're seeing steps taken to remove these so-called firewall laws, so we can have a clear look at how well our children are learning and what can be done to help them. Race to the top has begun in our schools. But the real competition will begin when states apply for the actual race to the top ranks. See, they had to make some changes just to even join the race. But now the race starts. And we're going to start seeing even more interesting changes, applications, to determine whether they measure up. We'll take a look at a state's track record to determine whether the steps they've taken have had real results when it comes to their students' education. We'll take a look at whether states are taking all hands-on-deck approach when it comes to reform. And in particular, we'll take a look at how states are doing when it comes to 4 key measures of reform. I want to get into some details about this because I want you as parents, as well as the educators, to understand what the data and the science and the studies and the research show actually make a big difference in terms of school improvement. And because that's what we were basing this stuff on. We didn't just kind of make it up. It didn't just do it because it sounded good. This is what the research shows is really going to make a difference. The first measure is whether a state is committed to setting higher standards and better assessments that prepare our children to succeed in the 21st century. And I'm pleased to report that 48 states are now working to develop internationally competitive standards. Internationally competitive standards because these young people are going to be growing up in an international environment where they're competing not just against kids in Chicago or Los Angeles for jobs, but they're competing against folks in Beijing and Bangalore. This is something I called for earlier this year. I want to commend the leadership of the governors and school chiefs who joined together to get the common standards that any state can adopt beginning early next year. And I urge all our states to do so and to upgrade what's taught in the classroom accordingly to meet these international standards. I also challenge states to align their assessments with high standards, because we should not just raise the bar, we should prepare our kids to meet it. There's no point in having really high standards, but we're not doing what it takes to meet those standards. And I want to be clear, that this is not just about more tests, because I know that in the past people have been concerned about, is this about standardized tests, or are we going to have our young people being taught to the test? That's the last thing we want. What we want to do is finally get testing right. So it's not about more tests, it's about being smarter about our assessments. It's about measuring not only whether our kids can master the basics, but whether they can solve challenging tasks. Do they have the skills like critical thinking, teamwork, entrepreneurship? They're not just interested in, can they fill out a bubble? Right? What we want to do is to take a look generally, are kids learning and gaining the critical thinking skills that they need to succeed? Now, these are the kinds of assessments that our state should be putting in place. We're setting up a separate competition where they can win grants, extra grants, to help them do just that. So standards and assessments, that's the first measure. Are we doing that well? If the state wants to get a race to the top grant, they've got to do that well. And because we know that from the moment our kids enter a school, the most important factor in their success, other than their parents, is the person standing in front of the classroom, the teacher. The second measure is whether a state is committed to putting effective teachers in its classroom and effective principals at the helm of its schools. Now, it's time to start taking this commitment seriously. We've got to do a better job recruiting and preparing new teachers. We've got to do a better job of rewarding outstanding teachers. And I've got to be honest, we've got to do a better job of moving bad teachers out of the classroom. Once they've been given an opportunity, alternate pathways to teaching for talented young people by expanding programs like the one used in Boston, where aspiring teachers work side by side with effective mentors in a year-long residency. It means bringing quality teachers to the neighborhoods that need them the most. Because right now, a lot of what happens is that some of the best teachers, as they get seniority, they move on to the places, the school districts that pay better and frankly are easier to teach. And we've got to give them some incentives to stay so that the kids who need the most help are getting some of the best quality teachers who can help our special education and English language learners meet high standards. And you've done that here at Wright, so congratulations on that. It means improving instruction in science, technology, reading, math, and ensuring that more women and people of color are doing well in those the second factor. Third measure we'll use in this race to the top competition is whether states are tracking the progress of our students and teachers to make sure every child graduates ready for college and a career. So, as I said earlier, before a state can even apply for a grant, it has to change any laws that prevent us from factoring in the performance of students when they're evaluating their teachers. But that's not enough. If a state wants to increase its chances of actually winning a grant, it's going to have to do more. It's going to have to collect information about how students are doing in a particular year and over the course of an academic career, and make this information available to teachers so they can use it to improve the way they teach. One of the things that teachers get so frustrated about is these standardized tests come at a time when it's too late to use to actually help the students improve their performance. So if we're going to collect data on how kids are doing, let's make sure the teachers have it in usable form so that they can actually start doing better jobs. Some schools will still be difficult to turn around. I want us to be honest about this. There are some schools that are starting in a tough position. A lot of kids coming from impoverished backgrounds.